Good evening, folks, and welcome to this evening, 23rd of July, Cabinet meeting. We've got quite a long agenda. I have apologies from Councillor Atherstone. I'm not aware of any other apologies because I think we're all here. So we will begin. So that's, anybody got any declarations of interest? No? Thank you very much. The minutes of the last meeting, which is on page 5 to 22. Has there anybody got any comments that they want to make on those minutes? Yes, there are. So we do have two sets of minutes from the previous Cabinet meeting because they were very close together. So any comments on either of those? Could I see a show of hands to approve those minutes then, please? Thank you. I will just sign those. That then leads us on to the I've taken that as being approval of both sets of the minutes. There are no matters that are referred from Council or Overview and Scrutiny or any of the other committees. And that takes us on to the reports from Cabinet members, that's into section 5. So the first item is the report for the playing pitch strategy, which is at pages 23 to 142, and it's Councillor Hallwood.
Thank you, Leader. And of course, we're all enjoying a great summer of sport, and with the Olympics about to start, we're all inspired to talk about health and physical activity. And this paper really derives actually from work started off by Councillor Max Wilkinson. Whatever happened to him, eh? And last July, he set out an overall vision for sport and physical activity in Cheltenham. And the vision was that Cheltenham would become a place where all our communities enjoy and benefit from physical activity and sports, creating active, healthy and happy communities. And obviously it celebrated the range of different sports and physical activities we have going on in our town, which range from swimming to bowling, from football, hockey, cricket, rugby union and rugby league, even American football, athletics, squash, gymnastics, BMX, table tennis, martial arts and more. It's an extraordinary variety of sporting and physical activities, and not all physical activity is sport. So it's important to mention that the strategy looked at gyms and halls used for dance and Pilates and yoga and other important physical activities. As I think I mentioned to you earlier on today, Leader, when I sent you an email, I feel tired just reading about it all. But one important thing that Max pointed out when he presented that original strategy is that not everyone in the town has the same opportunity to lead a healthy life. 21% of us aren't physically active in any meaningful way at all. That percentage doubles in our least well-off neighbourhoods, and it's also higher for disabled people and for those from certain ethnic minorities, particularly those from an Asian background. And school data shows that while 60% of boys do the recommended level of physical activity, and actually I don't think that is a fantastic percentage, that's 40% who don't, but the percentage falls below 50% for girls. And there are assorted barriers to why girls haven't been taking up sport in the same way. So we have a lot of work to do. And following on from that original strategy, there are two detailed assessments which have been carried out now. The first was presented to you as Cabinet in April, which was the detailed assessment of built facilities and sports infrastructure, including sports halls, swimming pools and so on. And that was approved in April. The one I'm presenting to you today is the parallel work in more detail on playing fields and pitches in particular. And both reports use the approved Sport England methodologies, which are very technical and very complex, and it's a long and quite detailed report. And it involved detailed conversations with the national governing bodies of each sport and involvement of local sports clubs as well. The look at the assessment of built facilities in sports included important commitments to explore options, for instance, for council facilities like Leisure At and the Prince of Wales Stadium, and many other recommendations as well. This playing field strategy includes detailed analysis of our playing fields, their security of tenure and usage as playing fields, their quality, and their actual usage and the number of free episodes of sport that they might have free, but in many cases actually revealing that they are overused or that there is a shortage of capacity in that particular sport. And it includes detailed analysis, sport by sport, and playing field by playing field. So it's a really detailed piece of work. I am aware, both on my own behalf, having read it, and from comments I've already received from colleagues, that in the detail there is still some work to be done, and that has shaped the recommendations which I'm setting before you, which are not simply to adopt this as a fait accompli, but to just go to slightly more detailed conversations, particularly with local sports stakeholders and clubs, and I'm sure with members as well, to just refine the detail in some cases. And so the recommendations are to note the findings and recommendations from the pitch strategy as set out and attached in the form of the full report, to share that strategy with all the organisations and partners identified in the action plan to review, but perhaps with wider stakeholders as well. I think that's perfectly acceptable. And to delegate authority to the Director for Community and Economic Development in consultation with the Cabinet member to make any final amendments to that playing pitch strategy, just to make sure it's absolutely on point. The strategy does identify shortfalls in capacity, including for youth football, for senior rugby, for cricket, and specifically for all-weather pitches on which we need more. And it identifies the need to improve specific pitches, and I'm sure there will be colleagues here who are looking out for Petersfield Park, but so it identifies that as one particular area where we need to commit to improvement. So that final check with local stakeholders is the next step in the recommendations. But there is also a note that we need to bring that back to tackle an overarching physical activity and sports action plan that we're going to bring back to this council and this cabinet in, well, hopefully the autumn, but certainly this year. And that is because there is a need to address more than just the physical facilities, more than just the buildings, more than just the playing pitches, and address some of those issues that Max originally set out that go beyond the physical infrastructure, the inequalities, the access to sport and the capacity to run sports clubs in some of our communities. And I'm very aware, I've had the fantastic example of Burrows Field in Leckhampton, where Leckhampton Rovers, through voluntary effort and the support of colleagues like Councillor Doby there, have raised an inordinate amount of money from the Football Foundation and others to do a near £1 million improvement of Burrows Field. But the capacity required to do that, from particularly Mark Beanie of Leckhampton Rovers, who spent years on this project, and from the volunteer sort of committee and those involved in Leckhampton Rovers, isn't available in every kind of community in our town. There are some communities where we have people who are working flat out all the hours of the day just to make ends meet, and where that kind of voluntary capacity simply doesn't exist. So in that overarching strategy, we need to address how we are going to build capacity in our communities to run and develop sports clubs like that, and to have the capacity to then go on and improve sports facilities and physical activities communities, and involve a real wider cross-section of our communities, and really fulfil Max's vision that everybody should be involved in sport and physical activity in our town. So on that basis, I would like to commend this report to Cabinet Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horwood. I've got Councillor Doby, you wanted to speak? Oh, you don't. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to Councillor Horwood for a very interesting report, which I have given a proper old read to. And you said that it was a very detailed report. Well, the trouble is when you're going to do something that's really detailed is smart asses like me go through it and say, well, that's not right. So I won't go. I've got a list. What I will do, I think the best thing for me to do here is to email yourself and to Richard to just make you aware of some of the things I don't quite understand. Very briefly, I couldn't quite get around my head the 3 local clubs that play in Cheltenham and the 4 that play just outside. So I'm talking specifically rugby clubs here. And it actually answered my question when I got to page 97, because it starts talking about Chosen Hill former pupils who aren't a Cheltenham club. They're not in the borough, but the report doesn't contain any references to some Cheltenham clubs that are Cheltenham clubs but don't play in the borough, if you see what I mean. For example, Cheltenham Ladies play at Bishop's Cleeve, and there's no reference to them, and their second and development 11s both play at Cheltenham Tigers Rugby Club, and there's an awful lot that seems to be going on at Cheltenham Tigers Rugby Club: rugby union, rugby league, football, American football, men's, ladies, children, boys, girls. You know, there's an awful lot going on there, and I'm very, very concerned that we could get into a situation where we're actually overusing a very, very good facility as a result. But I will send the details on to you so you can go, I have no idea what he's talking about, but anyway, it might make a bit of sense when I send it to you. Thanks very much.
I think it is capturing that kind of... Oh, sorry, Lee. Is that all right if I reply?
Can I come back to you at the end? Sure. Thank you. Councillor Telford.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to say, obviously, good bit of work, quite a lot of detail in there, and I've had sight of it before regarding all the parks and green spaces, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this can get some of our friends groups involved, and as you say, a lot of the volunteers involved to make this work across our parks and green spaces, and hopefully unlock funding from some of the slightly wealthier national organisations like the FA to start supporting some of those football clubs and get things moving.
Can I, before I come back to you, Councillor Hawker, can I just make a comment as well? I can see you're itching to come back. One of the things that there's a bit of a missing in there, and I'm hoping that it can be addressed when you go through the actual report itself, is that we do have a number of, you know, there's some identified in there that need investment. But I think in terms of that investment, I know, for example, that one of the football pitches that sit within my own ward, they were only able to, between February and between January and I think it was March, April time, they were only able to use the pitch that they use once, because there's a bit of a plea that says when you do your tweaks and looking at it, is just to look at all of the football pitches, not the ones that we've got, but those that do need investment, but make sure we capture all of those that need that investment, because actually they're not fit for purpose. But I'll come back to you now.
Yes, and just on that last point, I mean, the report does try to look at what it calls secured pitches, the ones that are guaranteed and the ones that are high quality, but also the ones that are less high quality, the ones that are poor, and the ones that aren't actually secure at all for community use going forward. But any further information, I think, needs to be fed into this slight refinement of this report. And I think Councillor Collins and Councillor Telford also make very good points, and that's exactly the kind of detailed local knowledge that we need to capture in this process going forward. So I would encourage both of them to feed in comments, and indeed any other colleagues and any member of our vast online audience on YouTube should look up the full report, which is in the public reports pack on the Cheltenham Borough Council website for this meeting, and to make any comments on any specific clubs or sports or pitches that they feel is appropriate as soon as possible. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Horwood. So this report is actually to note, but there are a few decisions in there that are being asked of us tonight. So I think actually, even if it's not a vote, it is to note. Can I see a show of hands that everybody's happy with those decisions and those notes that we've had before us today? Thank you very much. The next agenda item is the Household Support Fund arrangements, which is actually the report of Councillor Atherstone, who's not with us tonight. So I will do an introduction to that report. The objective of the Household Support Fund is to provide crisis support to vulnerable households that are in most need of support to help with significantly rising living costs. Each of the 6 districts has the flexibility to develop their own schemes that best meets the needs of our local communities, but we must comply obviously with the conditions that are set by the Department for Work and Pensions for delivery of the grant to provide that support with food, energy and water bills, household items. The fund can also be used to provide support with other essentials linked to energy, water and food. For example, insulation or energy efficient items which reduce bills, the purchase of equipment such as fridges, freezers, ovens, slow cookers or costs associated with obtaining these essentials, such as delivery and installation that would obviously go hand in hand with that. Government encourage authorities to consider supporting households on low incomes to repair or replace white goods and appliances with more energy efficient ones, or to invest in simple energy efficiency measures which will pay back quickly, such as insulating a hot water tank, fitting draft excluders to a front door, or replacing energy inefficient light bulbs or white goods. The intention of this is to provide sustainable support which results in immediate and potentially long-lasting savings for that household. The cost of living crisis remains a real issue for many of our local families, and we know that Cheltenham's food banks and food pantries are still supporting over 800 households per week. 47% of people accessing the Cheltenham Food Bank services are doing so due to the rising cost of essentials, and 1,068 households were referred to the food bank for the first time between 23 and 24. National Citizen Advice data suggests some 5 million people across the country, including 1.5 million children, are in a household with a negative budget. The problem is deepening, with the average monthly deficit for a negative budget household going from minus £270 in 2019-20 to £365 in 23-24. Locally, the Citizens Advice are dealing with up to 400 calls per week, with highest areas of concern relating to debt, welfare, benefits and housing. Last year, Cheltenham Housing Aid Centre provided advice to 140 clients, which represented an increase of 22% on the previous year. 38% of their clients are in receipt of disability benefits, which represents an increase again of 8.5% on the previous year. As in previous years, the government's focus on food, energy and household essentials means the council can draw on the support of a number of community-based organisations that are working closely with those most vulnerable due to the cost of living crisis. A sum of £140,376.13p has been allocated to Cheltenham Borough Council to cover the period 1st of April 24 to the 30th of September 2024, and that was calculated on a per head population basis using, it sounds daft, but using the latest data available, which was from 2021 in the mid-year population estimates. The Facing Hardship group met on the 6th of June this year. A cost of living seminar was held with 33 partners attending, representing 22 organisations. The opportunity of the Household Support Fund was shared with all attendees with an invite to attend subsequent meetings if they wish to be part of the delivery plan. In this way, the Council has been open about the opportunity with a wide range of potential delivery partners. And 2 meetings were then held with potential delivery partners on the 12th and 14th of June, and all 6 delivery partners confirmed their willingness to be part of the programme. Additional context for the development of the delivery plan is provided by our partnership ethos. So provision should be inclusive and open to as many people as possible. Provision should embody our No Child Left Behind community agreement, working hand in hand with families, understanding effects of poverty and trauma, and being compassionate and strengths-based. Provision should be partnership-based, building on the network of local community providers and the strength of our relationships, e.g. our community food network. Provision should be community-based, enabling people to build longer-term relationships with local providers, which is more sustainable in the long run. And working within the context set out above and the government guidance, the Council has started the work to assemble its delivery plan as members can see, that's set out in the table in paragraph 4.9 of this report. That was quite a long introduction, but it's quite an important subject. So I wanted to give it proper airtime. I'm happy to answer any questions. Those that I can't answer, I'll take away and come back. But does any member have any comments or questions they want to ask? Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. I've not got any questions, just me an observation of how important this funding is. I don't want to look back and lambast the previous government too much, but clearly just putting a pot of cash together to give out to local authorities to give to people and say we're solving the problem doesn't work, although this funding is so vital to so many families. And if you look in the detail, I'm going to pick out one particular figure. £45,240 is going to go to food support. People are actually, this is taking some of this funding and then giving it to our partners to make sure there's food support. And that's just the direct cost we're doing from this fund. Those providers that we're giving this money to, equally, through their network of organisations, tens of thousands of pounds on top of that food support they're managing to muster and give out to families across our town. So looking forward, it's going to be interesting to see how the new government look at these arrangements and look at how they're going to deal with the cost of living crisis and the real desperate levels of poverty that are there in some of our communities. Because when people can't actually feed themselves, then something's wrong with our society. But I welcome the funding and I welcome what we're doing proactively with our partners with the funding, Leader. So thank you for the report and the very detailed introduction, which was left me with a lot more knowledge than I thought that I read just in the report. Thank you.
Any other member? Councillor Clucas.
Just quickly to say thank you to Peter for the comments he's just made. It's amazing that in the 6th richest country in the world, we should be in that position. And it makes me feel ashamed. And it shouldn't, because I should be in a position where I can change things and help people. A small amount of money will help. It won't solve the problem. So you're right, Peter. That's where it lies, at the heart of government, the solution.
Thank you, members. Can I see a show of hands, please, to approve the report as the recommendations are set out? Thank you, folks. That's unanimous. That leads us on to agenda item 7, which is the review of waste and recycling receptacles. And that's the report of Councillor Telford.
Thank you, Leader. I bring this report and recommendations to Cabinet regarding the review of waste and recycling receptacles. Firstly, I'd like to say we've got a fantastic curbside sort recycling scheme here in Cheltenham that's been growing over the years since 2011. Ironically, the year I moved here, but clearly long before I got involved, so I'm not going to take any of that credit. More recently, though, this includes becoming the first local authority to offer the Podback scheme for residents, and we've collected around 4.5 million coffee pods so far. We've been trialling soft plastics collections in parts of town, and we'll be offering collection of Tetra Paks when we're required to in the future. And I think that's all very encouraging to me and showing how we're moving forward with our recycling and trying to recycle as much as we physically can. That said, we also face many environmental challenges and, of course, budgetary pressures from the increased cost of wages, fuel, tyres and maintenance. And we currently have to budget over £210,000 per year just for the costs of buying and delivering new and replacement receptacles. So there are multiple recommendations in this report, born primarily out of the need for sustainability, both environmentally and financially. The headline item, of course, being the recommendation 1 of charging £4.99 for delivery of new and replacement waste and recycling receptacles, reduced to £2.99 for those on certain benefits to help alleviate any pressures there. The hope is this charge will reduce unnecessary demand on these boxes from things like misuse, where people are using them as a free storage option, or I've had some reports of people growing potatoes in them, which does seem like a little bit of a question mark, and also aim of promoting a more careful attitude to these boxes. So the public are hopefully slightly more careful with their boxes, so less breakages. So we're having to replace less of these boxes because the amount of virgin plastic that's needed for these is quite high, and that environmental impact on its own is quite damaging. So trying to reduce as many replacements that we're having to create. We've also, of course, spoken to Yubico to ask that they are extra careful with how they are handling these receptacles, putting them back in the right places and stuff like that. They can't account for wind, but they'll be careful. And we've compared these charges to other local authorities and spoken to them to ensure that they've managed to keep a high recycling rate after introducing them, which they have done. While a slightly different method, Stroud, for example, charged £10 for a delivery. We've also tested these delivery costs against the equivalent Cheltenham to Cheltenham courier service with private courier, and it works out about the same. So we're not overcharging anyone. We wanted to make sure that everything was completely fair. We'll, of course, monitor any of the impacts and concerns going forward, particularly on recycling rates, and take action and make changes as required. But using Stroud, as I said, their recycling rates have stayed incredibly high despite being £10. So I think we can feel fairly confident that this should work out as we intend it to. Further in the report, obviously, recommendation 2 is for an increase to the charges for garden waste bags. It's not a heavily subscribed service, but we want it to be sustainable and carry on being able to be achieved and offered. And that also includes the £4.99 delivery up from their previous amount. Then we've got recommendations 3 and 4 with charges to housing developers for their sets of new bins and receptacles, and charges to landlords for their communal bins and their bins for rented properties, which I think we can all agree is completely fair to charge them, considering they are businesses making a profit and probably shouldn't really be subsidised by the Cheltenham residents and taxpayers, particularly with new housing developments when obviously they sell for quite a lot of money, so a little bit to pay for their bins and make that fair seems completely all right to me. And on a similar note, our final recommendation is that we delegate authority to officers to take action and agree charges to Airbnbs going forward. So Airbnbs are charged as if they're a business for commercial waste rather than getting that free, as the residents of Cheltenham do as part of their council tax. I think that's, again, completely right to do, but the way this is worded is it's going to allow us to approach these Airbnbs and find a proper solution rather than just a flat amount that's going to charge to everyone, because that wouldn't work, obviously, with the amounts that they're used. But it allows us to move forward and take this forward. Well, I acknowledge some of these recommendations might not be the most popular with everybody. I believe they're necessary for environmental and financial reasons and sustainability, and I hope Cabinet will support them. But I'm happy to take any questions anyone has.
Thank you, Councillor Telford. I've got Councillor Dobie and then I've got Councillor Horwood.
Well, as your predecessor, won't surprise you that I do support these. But I do have a question for you as the current member for this portfolio, and I'm asking now as the Cabinet member for climate emergency. So how will the waste and recycling receptacles actually be delivered, Councillor Telford? Will you bear in mind the climate emergency and act appropriately?
Yes, that's been born into quite a lot of what we've done here. So Yubico will be delivering the receptacles for us, and they'll be using vehicles that are fuelled by HVO, which is up to 94% cleaner than diesel. They're also going to be taking some zonal approaches to the deliveries, so they're not just making trips there, here, there and everywhere. They're doing sections at a time to ensure that as few trips are needed as possible. So hopefully that will help mitigate any impact.
Yes, I'd like to thank Councillor Telford for this report. It seems to me completely consistent with a scheme that is, after all, entirely designed to reduce waste, that we try to reduce waste of the bins themselves. I don't think that's a problem, really. I would just like to ask, because obviously people will make comparisons with other authorities. He mentioned that Stroud charge sounds like rather more than he's planning to charge, and I know that Bristol City have also been charging for some time. How, in general, do we compare with other councils across Gloucestershire and across the country in introducing these charges? And my second question is, can you just confirm that if you're a new householder moving into a new house in Cheltenham, you should expect the developer to provide all the recycling bins for free?
Yeah, as you said, with Stroud and Bristol as well. Those are ones that are already charging. We've used them as comparisons. Stroud, we've heavily talked to ensure that everything's working okay. And as you said, ours are cheaper delivery, which I'm sure people will be happy with. And with new housing developments, yes, absolutely. The housing provider should be the one supplying these sets of bins, and it shouldn't be on the resident to have to buy it when they buy a new house. It should be provided for them free of charge to them.
Can't actually see any other member indicating to speak. So can I see a show of hands to approve the recommendations as they're set out? Thank you very much. That's a unanimous. The next agenda item is the report of Councillor Jeffreys, and it's about the Levelling Up Fund award.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, the purpose of this report is to obtain approval from Cabinet colleagues to accept the £20 million of capital grant funding that we received, and this is allocated for the development of the National Cyber Innovation Centre and the Mobility Hub. It's a bit of a backward decision when you think about it in some respects, because you may have read the press and associated articles some weeks ago. But nonetheless, that news announcement was one thing. Now we've worked through some of the detail. Firstly, I want to just put on record my thanks for the team of officers, quite an extensive team of officers across the council who put in the bid and pulled that bid together, because this is no mean feat about just filling an application form. And it wasn't the first bid that we had successful, this is the second bid. And so a lot of work went in from a number of officers from the council, and I'll put on record my thanks for their work. This will obviously go towards our funding of the National Cyber Innovation Centre and the Mobility Hub, which I'm sure colleagues are well versed on. So if Cabinet colleagues have to support, I propose this. Thank you, Leader.
Any member got any comments? Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. Just to ask, Pete, because of course the government are putting in £20 million, which we greatly appreciate. Thank you to them. But we both know the answer to this question, because it's a question that keeps us both up very late at night with low levels of stress, because we actually have a really good plan here. But how much is the council putting in, and what do we think we're getting for it?
Thank you, Alicia. Well, we could start from the beginning and look at the capital investment on purchasing the land. We can look at the revenue costs of year-on-year delivering the project. We can look at the funding envelope when it looks for the actual development costs. And if you added all those sort of notional figures together, you're over £140 million. And then when you look at the rollout of GV in the future years, so that's the cost, you may say, but actually the benefits to this council in terms of the incoming revenue, incoming streams, and the benefits to the town is astronomical. I think I've heard talk, not only is this the biggest development and biggest growth item in Gloucestershire, possibly in the southwest. So yes, a huge investment by this council. So whilst a small grant fund from the government is welcomed, I'm hoping that in the coming months the new government will recognise all the work we've put in and the significance of this project, and who knows, maybe we'll be lucky enough to get some more funding. Thank you.
I can see no other member asking to comment. So can I see a show of hands that of course we are going to accept £20 million? Thank you, members. That leads us now on to agenda item 9, which is the Housing Strategy Action Plan, and that's the report of Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Leader. If you happen to have a spare couple of £1 million, that would be very helpful in this instance. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Leader, this is actually an update on work that has been done over the last few years. And what we are looking at here is helping those who are homeless, who are perhaps trying to get their own home for the first time, who are looking for social housing. And all of that is in the document as to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And the really interesting thing is that we are already starting. So, for example, let me take my own ward, and then nobody can blame me. In my own ward, there is a development called Swindon Farm. Swindon Farm has started building about 265, 266 homes. Of those homes, 93 will be affordable. Some will be for first purchase, for first homes. Some will be social housing. And some obviously will be for those people who have no hope at all of getting a home, who are homeless. And so what we're seeing here is a way for this council, this town, to say to those who can't afford a £500,000 home, can't afford to go to a bank necessarily and get a full mortgage for a £250,000 home, perhaps can't even afford to buy their own home or even pay a deposit to rent one. You know what? Your council's here for you, and this is what we're doing. And we're doing it because it's the right thing to do for our residents, for our people, for our children growing up, and that's why we're doing it. So I hope we will have the support of the council as a whole for this. I hope we'll have the support of Cabinet for this evening. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. It's amazing what we do as a little district council sometimes, isn't it, and what the impact we can have. Just to cast colleagues' minds back that in my own journey into Cheltenham, I was homeless. And then I lifted myself to the lofty heights of Cabinet for Housing many moons ago, a few years back. And I can remember taking one of these strategy documents through. And they're very extensive, but the impact of these documents and what we do as a council, directly, indirectly, and with partners, has a profound effect on people. I can remember doing a rough sleeping project and speaking to those people that rough sleeping is an interesting word. I call it existing on our streets because it is a form of existence. So I welcome the updates, always do, because I find it fascinating reading, because not only do we as a council have a direct impact, but our working with partners across, a variety of sectors bring even more benefits. We've got a housing crisis. We've had one all of my life. I'm not sure we'll ever get out of this housing crisis, but we're doing everything we can as a council to alleviate that. I'm really pleased in my portfolio now I've got housing delivery, and I'm in discussion with officers about how we can have that housing delivery strategy and try and accelerate some more houses being built. They are being built, but we do need more of them. So I welcome the report. Thank you, Councillor Clucas. Thank you, Leader.
I can see no other member wishing to speak on that. So could I ask that Cabinet approve the Housing, Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy Action Plan update for 2024? Thank you, everybody. That leads us on to agenda item 10, which is nominations to outside bodies, and that's the report of myself. So the external bodies to which nominations and appointments are made comprise a variety of organisations and groups. Some are distinct legal entities in their own right, such as companies or trusts, whilst others are unincorporated. In most cases, the authority decides who to nominate to the outside body concerned, and it is then for that body to decide on whether to accept the nomination and make the appointment. There are some limited exceptions to this, such as the Cheltenham Borough Homes, Gloucestershire Airport and the Cheltenham Trust, where the council has the right, by virtue of its interests in those companies, to make the nominations and appointments or stroke appointments to the boards of directors. The appointments importantly, are only for 2 years, and under the executive functions set out in our constitution in Part 3 of the council's constitution, the leader has the power to make nominations and appointments to outside bodies where they relate to an executive function, or to indeed revoke such nominations and appointments, provided there is a group leader agreement. Where there is not group leaders agreement, the decision is referred to the council. In this instance, as there is a group leader agreement, I'm asking Cabinet to approve these recommendations as they're set out in the report. Could I please see a show of hands? Unless anybody's... No, but he's got a comment. Right. Thank you. That leads us on to, sorry, I'd lost my place for a minute, sorry folks. That leads us on to the appointment of the next agenda item, which is the corporate plan update and end of year performance report. And again, that's the report of myself. As you all know, the corporate plan is a key document that sets out the council's priorities and objectives and how success will be measured within it. The plan allows the council to set resources against agreed priorities and provides the framework to help prioritise future opportunities. Our current corporate plan runs from 23 to 27, and a review report to the end of March 24, members can see at Appendix 3. Within that, highlights include that in September 23, the council entered into a conditional development funding agreement with partners HBD X Factory, which will provide up to £95 million to enable construction of the first phase of Golden Valley development, including the National Cyber Innovation Centre, for which obviously we've just seen a report come forward tonight. There was an £85,000 grant was secured to fund the detailed feasibility study for 2 potential heat networks, one in Golden Valley and the other in the town centre, and work commenced on that study in January, and I know it is still ongoing. The Cheltenham Zero initiative now has 170 businesses registered, and using some of the UK SPF funding, the council commissioned Zellar, an online sustainability platform which enables businesses to calculate their carbon emissions and provides them with action plans to reduce their emissions. At the end of March, 64 businesses had engaged with the platform, leading to 462 sustainability actions being carried out by those businesses. Decarbonisation work is being undertaken on the council's social housing stock, and work has already been completed on 89 properties and work is underway on another 40. During 23-24, the Housing Options Service presented the homelessness of, or assisted out of homelessness, 435 households. Between February 23 and March this year, 129 affordable homes were delivered as part of our 180 million housing investment plan. Over 90 organisations are now signed up to the No Child Left Behind community agreement. Amongst other activities in 23-24, that organisation, or No Child Left Behind, delivered a holiday activity and food programme which ran across the spring and summer and winter holidays. Earlier, Cabinet approved a vacant units and town centre land use efficiency action plan in September last year, and the council is working with the Cheltenham BID, or Business Improvement District. Relationships have been established with town centre agents, and inquiries from potential incoming operators are managed and referred accordingly. In January 23, the council received over £1 million from the UK government through the, again, UK SPF, and that's enabled the delivery of a number of projects for this council in 23. In addition to the corporate plan review, an end-of-year performance report is also attached at Appendix 4, and this document sets out the key performance indicators reported by service managers in 23-24, together with an end-of-year commentary. This is the second full year of reporting figures for 22-23, having been presented to Overview and Scrutiny Committee in October last year. Overall performance has been good, but there are some areas where performance could be improved, as you can see that's set out in the report in 2.4. And it should be noted that in Appendix 4, it's pleasing to note that of the circa 52 reports within that document, 37 are ragged as green. Our corporate plan is a living document and should be regularly monitored and updated. To that end, the recommendations are asking for approval of a refresh. And that's one of the reasons for that is the integration of Cheltenham Borough Homes back into this council to create a larger organisation means a refresh of the corporate plan is needed to reflect the new arrangement and the broadened range of activities that will be undertaken by this council. Over the coming months, work will be undertaken to update the plan with a view to launching the revised plan from April 2025. This will include a consultation process with members and with staff from across the wider organisation to ensure the view of current Cheltenham Borough Council staff and those who have transferred across from CBH can be captured and incorporated. And sitting alongside that refreshed plan will be a new set of performance metrics to support the plan and success. For this year, to ensure continuity in performance management, service managers will be asked to report on a streamlined set of performance metrics aligned to the priorities of the existing corporate plan. I'm happy to take any questions from Cabinet members, but do look for their support. Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Leader. I've got no questions, but it is nice to read such a detailed document. And I suppose, if you think about the depth and breadth of things that we as a council do, this is amazing. Like you say, of all the 50 metrics we're using, the amount they're in green and positive is really something exceptional. But let's not forget that this is in the backdrop of what was coming out of a pandemic, a cost of living crisis, the financial crisis as well, and the worst government living memory, as far as I can tell, that basically just couldn't, well, everything went wrong. So when you look at it in that context, this is above exceptional, really, when you think about it. So I'm really delighted to read this sort of detail, because you sort of lose touch with different parts of the council when you concentrate on your own portfolio. So thank you, Leader, and I look forward to that revised plan, especially now we've gone through this reorganisational stage with our housing services. So the revised plan next year is going to be some interesting reading. So thank you very much, Leader.
Any other member wish to comment? No? Can I see, so really this is, even though this is to note, well, in fact it is to note this report, and to, obviously I'd like to see a show of hands, because actually we need to agree to a refresh. If I could just see a show of hands for that refresh of the corporate plan. Thank you very much. So our final report for the evening is that of, again, Councillor Atherstone, who is on annual leave. So I will present that for her tonight. The Cheltenham Detached Youth Work Programme started in July 21 and finished on 30th of June 2023. And the programme was delivered by Inspire to Aspire, following a grant process, and plans for a continuation of the programme for another year were paused due to a reduction in funding available to deliver that programme. Following a review, it was decided that future development of detached youth work in Cheltenham should be led by the No Child Left Behind strategic board, as this would allow the No Child Left Behind partners to add value and support the programme. The No Child Left Behind board agreed that the data around young people's mental health and wellbeing concerns raised by schools around persistent absence and the issue of criminal exploitation meant it was vital that detached youth work should continue to be delivered. It therefore worked with partners to develop revised guidelines for detached youth work to be delivered in 24-25. And that was so the No Child Left Behind partnership were able to develop a grant pot of £47,000 to deliver detached youth work in the borough between February this year and March next year. That was made up of contributions from £30,000 from the Home Office Safer Streets funding, £10,000 from NHS Gloucestershire Strengthening Local Communities Fund, and £7,000 from our Housing Revenue account. Due to the analysis of need and the requirements of the funding received, revised criteria for the programme were written. And the aim of the programme is to enable young people in Cheltenham to have access to high quality and effective youth work practice that is inclusive and easily accessed in a time and place that meets their needs. This year's Detached Youth Work Programme will focus on support for 11 to 18-year-olds who are at risk of engaging in risky behaviour, including antisocial behaviour and or getting drawn into other criminal activities. It also focuses on young people who live in St Paul's and the Moors area of St Peter's, or who gather in the town centre. So the No Child Left Behind recommendation that's come through to us to Cabinet to consider, it's recommended that Cabinet agree the decision of the panel to award the grant to the ROC, because their bid offered good understanding of the needs of local young people, and demonstrated the ROC's expertise in working with the specified cohort. And the bid set out clearly their ambitions for the programme and how they would work with partners to meet the needs of those young people and ensure the delivery was young people centred. And the panel noted that a number of partners had submitted endorsements within the bid to support that application. I'm happy to take any questions, but do ask Cabinet for their support in approving the recommendations. Any member? No, that neatly leads us on then. It's can I see a show of hands to approve the recommendations as they're set out? Thank you very much. That now leads us on to the section 6 of briefing session. So if I start with Councillor Horwood.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd just like to report back from a brilliant community event held by this council on the 17th of July, which was focused on the strengthening local communities grants which we receive from the NHS and which we disperse to local community groups as the health and wellbeing grants. And we last year distributed over £100,000 worth of those grants, and we heard report backs from some amazing projects who have done extraordinary work. These are generally grants under £10,000, which were aimed to connect people to their communities, to encourage them to be active, to eat healthily, and interestingly to be creative. And some of the most inspiring projects were actually creative projects, like the Art for All project, which reaches out to anyone with a mental health condition and uses art in a therapeutic way. The Open Minds project from Artlift and Cheltenham Open Door, which uses art to engage with vulnerable adults, including one elderly man who we heard about, who had not left his flat in Cheltenham for more than 2 years, but which this project got out and had him regularly engaging with a project and socialising and making connection with his community. I mean, we are, through some of the grants we make, I know there are big numbers and, big amounts of money involved, but some of the individual differences we make to individuals' lives are truly astonishing. There was also the All Sorts project, which offers play opportunities for children with special needs, the Enrich project, which is delivered by former Cheltenham Borough Homes to promote healthy lifestyles, and more and more and more. And the amount of money we will be doing in the next round of grant funding is going to be even more. It's going to go up to 170,000, and grants will open in September. It's a fantastic success story for this council, and I would like to just single out Richard Gibson, who I'm aware is sitting watching our proceedings, as the lead officer for doing an exceptional job on this, and to congratulate him and his team. As indeed I should have thanked him really for the playing fields strategy work as well, actually. But it's a brilliant project. In other news, I think we should also, while we're doing congratulations, congratulate Cheltenham Festivals on the conclusion of the Cheltenham Music Festival in July. My personal highlight was an exceptional concert by the Dunedin Consort, I should say, and guitarist Sean Shibe at the Pitfall Pump Room, which is one of the finest chamber music venues in the country. And also congratulate, perhaps through slightly gritted teeth, the Gloucestershire Cricket Club on the conclusion of the Cheltenham Cricket Festival. I still don't understand the game, but and lots of people clearly enjoyed it, and clearly enjoyed all the hospitality as well, and that was a very successful festival. And to tell members that the Cheltenham Paint Festival is coming up very shortly indeed, 27th to 28th of July, that the Suffolk Sunday Market is on the 28th of July, and the brilliant Radev exhibition, which I would particularly commend to Councillor Telford, is on at the Wilson Art Gallery and Museum, and still on, and is a really extraordinary exhibition that was developed for the Wilson, but which connects to the Bloomsbury Group and to British art history and to LGBT history, and it's just exceptional. So we have an enormous amount going on. This could be possibly the best summer ever to visit Cheltenham. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Horwood, and thank you for your passion. Councillor Clucas.
I can't follow that. Thank you very much, Councillor Horwood. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Jeffreys.
It is somewhat difficult to follow Councillor Horwood, but I have two little items, and I'll try and give equal passion to them. I need to thank my colleague across the chamber because I picked up the portfolio, and one of the things I was brought up to speed of quite quickly was the social value strategy that officers are working on, and I just thought I'd give members a heads up that I'm hoping to have a document to be able to bring back to you post-summer. Equally, one of the other strands of work in my portfolio is the housing delivery. I think I mentioned it in one of the items we were talking about. And that I'm keenly working on, and so look forward to drafts of that coming in your inboxes at some point. We can have a discussion about housing delivery and how we can accelerate that. So thank you, Leader.
Councillor Doby.
Not at this time, Leader.
Councillor Telford.
Yes, I think one of the things, after I've finally gone to the Wilson, one of the good things to enjoy during the summer, obviously, in Cheltenham is all of our amazing parks. And I think and green spaces. And I think that's one of the things I want to bring here is the fact that, once again, 7 of our parks and green spaces were were awarded and retained their green flag status this year, which is, to be honest, fantastic. They include Sanford Park, Haverley Park, Montpellier Gardens, Naunton Park, Pittville Park, Springfields Park, and Winston Churchill Memorial Garden. And I think one of the things that I like to take from that is how spread out they all are. They're not all the ones right around the town centre. They're actually at multiple corners of the town. And I think that's really important to show that we're caring for our communities across the town. And they're getting to enjoy these green spaces everywhere. Pittville Park as well also achieved the Green Heritage Site accreditation, which is supported by Historic England. And that's done that again for its management of its historic features. And again, I think that's all of these are a testament to the dedication of all of our volunteers, the Friends of groups for each of the parks, the Green Space team, the Yubico grounds maintenance cleansing team, who work really hard all year round, raining, getting in the river, pulling out, the Himalayan balsam, whatever it is, doing all of those things all through the year to make sure that we can all enjoy these parks when it's rainy or when there's some summer sunshine after a visit to the Wilson. So I hope everyone else, can get out and enjoy those as we get a bit more sunshine going, and kind of takes in a bit of appreciation for the amount of work that goes in, particularly by those Friends of groups, to make those places as amazing as they are. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to note the incredible amount of work that has gone into the report that we took to Council yesterday. We're having so much fun. Time really does fly. The outturn is a really spectacular document, I think. It's an absolute testament to a year of dedicated, sensible fiscal decision-making, and to my good colleague, Councillor Pete Jeffries, who didn't want me to thank him. He can see the face across the chamber, but he's getting one anyway. So thanks to the officers for that, and thanks to our colleagues in the Green Party for supporting it in its entirety without asking a single question.
Councillor Collins.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I've got one. I'm going to try and be as passionate as Councillor Horwood, but I don't think I'm going to manage it. I was lucky enough to be invited to the opening of our brand new Alcourt Transport Hub today, and I went along, and it was very, very interesting. And the original invitation said guests can park their car on the upper levels. So I was quite keen to take. The only time I can think of, I'm ever going to take my car to the Alcourt Transport Hub. So I drove it there, and unfortunately they wouldn't let me in. But the gates were closed.
Was it you, or was
No, it was everyone. They had actually sent out an amendment to the invitation that said that we were allowed to park across the road in the B&Q car park. And what they'd arranged was the first vehicle that would officially enter the new 21st century Alcourt Transport Hub was actually a classic car. It was a Vauxhall Viscount that is owned and driven by one of my local residents, actually. So he drove the first vehicle in, and the second vehicle was the Gloucestershire County Council EV vehicle, which drove in. It's all open, it's all there, it's really interesting. And the only other thing I would say is when we did the walk around, the markings on the concrete floors are a bit unusual. They're yellow and they're black, there's no white. I found it, being a colourblind person, really interesting that all the car park spaces are marked out in black, which I've never ever seen before. And I did ask a question as to why this colour scheme was being used, and they said, well, because the concrete is so light in colour, when they first painted white lines on it, they were very difficult to see. So they've used a different colour scheme, which is, I don't know if it's unique, but it is unusual. So that was very good. And I would say to anyone who does want to park and ride, give it a go, because it's really, it's brand spanking new and it's all shiny and bright. So give it a go. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I've just got one thing that I wanted to bring to attention. There's the mention of the Paint Festival, but also the Business Improvement District. They have been, you may have noticed, but many of you will know that the Bath Road has had their utility boxes all painted with art. And actually the Business Improvement District there are 8, I think it's 7 boxes that are being painted. There's more that they could do, but actually the interesting bit is actually identifying who owns those, because you obviously need permission to paint them before, and some of them are quite tricky to find out who they belong to, but they make a big difference because they help towards the lack of graffiti, which is an ongoing problem for the town. So the more that we can do and be creative in using those, the better. So congratulations to the Business Improvement District. I'm going to use this quite unashamedly to say that we've talked a lot about poverty. We've had quite a number of reports around poverty today, and fundraising in particular for food pantries. In case any of you missed it, Councillor Jeffries is having his head and beard shaved in public, live, and that he has a Just Giving page. So do go Just Give to it. That takes us to the end of the member briefing session. What we do now have is decisions by Cabinet. So there was a decision by Councillor Lewis, first of all.
Thank you, Lena. I have made the decision to dispose of a property as part of our portfolio. It is a high-value property. It's worth quite a substantial amount of money, and unfortunately, the cost of bringing it up to an appropriate spec to be occupied in the future was not reasonable in terms of the return it would have offered us as a space. So instead, we're taking this opportunity to dispose of it and take the money we make, which will be a significant capital receipt, to invest further in our housing strategy and to provide good quality accommodation moving forward.
There was another decision made by Councillor Doby.
Thank you, Leader. Before diving into just a little detail on this decision, I'd like it noted that the lead monitoring officer for UK Shared Prosperity Fund grant funding has already confirmed that this third-year spend, as outlined here, is appropriate and meets the grant fund guidelines. Leader, you referred earlier this evening to what this council is already doing to support local, small and medium-sized businesses seeking to reduce their energy use. This is being done via the current tranche of the SPF. This work will continue to be delivered through this third year of tranche funding. And secondly, may I highlight that in line with our Fabric First approach to domestic energy conservation, the CDC third-year SPF outlined here, the spend includes offering access to home energy assessment reports. And moreover, it offers grants for homeowners towards retrofitting their properties to make them more energy efficient. So I commend this decision to you.
Thank you, Councillor Doby. So the final decision for tonight's meeting is Councillor Telford on the cemetery and crematorium.
Yep, so this was a decision to approve the provision of new technology, effectively, a new system that they're going to be using at the cemetery and crem, designed to make them much more efficient, because they're currently doing a lot of things by paper, having to take phone calls on a lot of things, get everything digitised and make it a much more straightforward process for them, processing bookings, which I think when it comes to dealing with funeral services and things like that will make it a lot more simple for the end user to be able to find the right time on the right date to make their booking, especially at such a challenging time for those people. To be able to make it as simple as possible, I think is a really good idea. And it also allows us to have a much better record keeping and easily available record keeping, and ways for people eventually to be able to look on a map and see where people are buried. So if they want to visit a relative that was buried in the cemetery, they'll be able to find exactly where that is and not have to wander around for too long getting lost. And hopefully it'll make everything a much more pleasant experience and a lot more efficient too.
Thank you, Councillor Telford. So there are no other items that I as leader determine as urgent, so that's the end of this part of the meeting, but we do have to now go into, I need to read out the recommended approval to go into private session. So I need to say to you that in accordance with the section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining agenda items, as it is likely that in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, if members of the public are present, there will be disclosed to them exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 5, Part 1, Schedule 12A, Local Government Act 1972, namely, paragraph 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Paragraph 5, information in respect of which a claim to legal professional privilege could be maintained in legal proceedings. Can I see a show of hands to approve those?